Lachlan Valley Railway. They are one of the biggest players in the rail preservation game. However, all of this comes at a great cost, and they needed to make a way of having a sustainable income. What they would do would be the inspiration of several other heritage organisations, such as ARHS Canberra and the Picnic Train. Make their own railway company. In 1989, the Lachlan Valley Railway had been operating from the Cowra Roundhouse for a couple decades, fully owning it at one point when the SRO vacated it in 83, and in 87 they owned the entire line it was located on, the Blaney-Demandrill line. This line is big, I mean seriously big, only about 50 k's shorter than the entire South Coast line. This required quite a lot of money to keep running, especially if it's just for heritage train use. In 1990, the company Lachlan Valley RailFreight would be created to operate wheat trains between Woodstock and Cowra on behalf of the Grain Handling Authority, now known as GrainCorp. However, due to repairs along that line, there wouldn't be a single train until September 1993, with Loco 4204 operating the first several services. The fleet would include several ex-Australian National Freight wagons, locomotives 4701, 4708, previously mentioned 4204, 4464, 4473 and 4486. The locos used for these services were understandably not being any sort of corporate livery, as they were being used on the site for heritage services. In August 1994, LVRF operated wheat trains heading from Fragere on the Ugura line to Cowra using their 47 class locomotives. However, these were a different fleet of locomotives compared to 4701 and 4708. This was a new fleet of 4702, 4703, 4707 and 4716, with 4717 being aboard at a later date. They would also bring about a fleet of 44 class locomotives, however these were leased by the heritage group Hunter Valley Railway Trust. On the 6th of December 1994, locomotives 4458, 4461, 4463, 4472, 4488, 4497 and 4498 would be bought by the trust and stored at Rothby Riot. They were all restored back to operation at least before 2001, with 4458 being the final one in October that year. They all had contrasting liveries inspired by past operators. However, the upkeep of these locos leaves something to be said. 3 would feature completely new liveries. 4488 would appear in this garish yet ornate new Central Railroad livery, which I kinda actually like. I have zero clue where the name come from. Might have been a trading name for the HVRT at one point, or maybe LVRF? I don't know. 4461 featured a two-tone orange tricolour with vermilion on the top and bottom and cream right through the middle. Not bad, but certainly not good either. Also, light blue numbers? You know what? Doesn't look bad. 4458 featured this.
Bruh.
Did they make this in Train's paint shed? Used to have this beautiful freight rail livery, but then they just painted all over with forest green and white. It looks so plain and ugly. I mean, at least it got painted unlike some others. In all seriousness, I'm being way too harsh. These people were using nothing but their own blood, sweat and tears to get these locomotives running, and I greatly admire their efforts. In June 1999, LVRF commenced services between Port Botany and the Cooks River Container Terminal in Sydney. In July, they would enter into agreements with R&H Transport Services to operate services between Cooks River and Carrington. Due to congestion around Carrington, the trains would more often than not be sent to the toll holding siding at Sandgate. The run numbers for the train would be 4168 Botany bound and 1468 Carrington or Sandgate bound. 4717 was repainted into an R&H Transport livery for these operations, which it would wear for the rest of its operation. For the first few months of operation, 4486 and 4701 from the Heritage Fleet would also help out. 4703 would also be repainted into the, I guess, official LVRF livery. Okay, for the next segment, most of this was pieced together from Railpage, Vixig, Wikipedia, and just Flickr photos, so while you may take this with a grain of salt, just understand that piecing all of this together was incredibly painful, and I hope that most of it is factual. On the 25th of July 2000, a shunting accident in Port Botany caused a chemical spill, requiring workers to all be evacuated. Except for just one guy who was just left in the mess. Poor fella. 2001, the 442 class rebuilds began in preparation of the sale of Freight Corp. These would become the GL and JL classes. We can forget the GLs for now at least and focus on the JLs. 44204 would become JL401, named Paul Fitzgerald. 44206 became JL402. 44208 became JL403, named Mark's Baby. 44209 became JL404, named Jim's Baby. And 44232 became JL406. Where was JL405? Don't ask. These would all be sold immediately after to CFCLA, where LVRF would use them on a long-term lease. JL401 would be painted into a livery reminiscent of the NSWGR Tuscan livery, but with the Tuscan red replaced with a deep blue. JL402 would receive a similar treatment, being repainted into forest green, with it covering the window outlines too. JL403 would be painted into a standard CFCLA livery, reminiscent of the EL and S classes owned by them. JL404 would wear this patchwork livery through to at least 2002 before being repainted into the R&H Transport Services livery, and JL406 would be repainted into this unique variant of the CFCLA livery. The GL classes have very little to do with LVRF, but they had a much major rebuild, as you can see here. Also starting in this year, they would place a banner across the front loco wishing everyone a Merry Christmas on an annual basis on December 25th. On the first run, there would be Australia Southern Railway leased 42210, 4458, 4717 and 42207. Okay, you know what? There's just so many random locos that they leased for like a couple runs, like every now and then, so here's just a compilation of them all. Enjoy. In 2002, the Christmas train would feature JL406, EL58 from CFCLA, 42207 from ASR, 4717 and 42210, with a man dressed up as Santa Claus leading out of the cab waving to gunsels and the like. In 2003, the Christmas train would feature JL403, JL404, EL52 and EL54, still with Santa waving. In 2004, Austrac Loco 1873 would lead the R&H container run on the 16th of March. This is the only footage I can find of this happening. The final Christmas train would run with GM32, GM40T, 4463 and 4458 with Santa waving. By October 2006, Lachlan Valley Railway had successfully made their money. They would sell off Lachlan Valley RailFreight to Stephen Haragfi, the owner of Beauport All Roads Transport Party Limited. This was a trucking business that served the Greater Sydney region, mostly focusing on containers from Port Botany. They were also the owners of the Macarthur International Shipping Terminal, better known as MIST. It's actually in Minto, but don't worry about it. Lachlan Valley RailFreight would rebrand into Independent Rail. A little bit later on though. Okay, I'm gonna do the history of Independent Rail in a separate video because it's already almost at like 10 minutes and it's gonna take ages to edit, and I've also got to edit another video and then do a bunch of homework. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.